It's Pastor Dave Schreffler of Zion Lutheran Church in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania. It's time to do a gander at the gospel, a time to take a look at how God might be calling us through the gospel. It's appointed for this coming Sunday. This coming Sunday is February 14th, 2021. It is Transfiguration Sunday. It's also Valentine's Day. And the gospel lesson that we have for this coming Sunday comes to us from the Gospel of St. Mark. It is the 9th chapter, and it is verses 2 to 9. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. And his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. The Gospel of our Lord. This is Maisie. Say hi, Maisie. Say hi. Aw. Almost 10 years ago or more, a man by the name of Larry Walters was sitting in his lawn chair in his backyard, wishing he could fly. For as long as Larry could remember, he wanted to fly, but he never had time to become a pilot. Hang gliding was out of the question because of where he lived. There was no place really to go hang gliding, so he often would sit in his backyard staring up at the sky. Well, one day, Larry decided that was going to change, and he took his lawn chair, the kind that folds out with the rivets and it's the aluminum chair, that has the webbing, and he tied, get this, 45 helium-filled surplus weather balloons to his lawn chair. He put a CB radio in his lap. He strapped a bag to him that had a couple of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. He also put a BB gun over his shoulder so that when it was time to come down, he could just shoot the BB gun at the balloons, little by little to come back down to Earth. And so it was that day he lifted up, hoping he might go a couple 100 feet in the air. The problem was Larry Walters went 11,000 feet in the air into the approach corridor of Los Angeles International Airport, which created quite a commotion, as you can imagine. And when the reporters asked him, probably after he was arrested, when the reporters asked him why he did it, Larry simply said, "Well, you just can't sit there. You just can't sit there." Years ago, I used to go hiking with a group of men up into the presidential ranges in New Hampshire, the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And one of the trips we took, we were going to climb Mount Washington. You see people with a bumper sticker that might say, "This car climbed to Mount Washington." I think there's also a train that goes up to the top of Mount Washington. Well, we climbed the trail to the top, and all was going well. It started out at kind of an overcast day, but as we continued to climb, fog began to come in and enshroud us, and it was raining and blowing, and it wasn't the best weather for hiking. But we trudged to the top, and we eventually made it to the top, and we took a well-deserved rest as we sat around that visitor area up there at the top of Mount Washington. And now we could have just stayed there. We could have just taken in the view and felt good about our accomplishment, but we couldn't stay. We had to continue going, for we weren't at the place that we were going to sleep the night and to get some food, And besides, we didn't want to just sit and relish in our accomplishment. There were other mountains to climb. When we come up to the transfiguration in the Gospel of Mark, we realize Jesus hasn't been sitting around much. Just before this theophany, as we call it, Jesus and his disciples were traveling. First they were in Capernaum, then they were in Bethsaida, and then in Caesarea Philippi. Jesus healed a man who was blind. He questioned his disciples. He taught them that he would be rejected by the religious leaders who would put him to death, but he would rise again. And of course, many of these teachings the disciples didn't quite understand. So before going to the mountain, before this transfiguration event, they rested for 6 days, the text tells us. Now, 6 days, why 6 days? Scholars really aren't quite sure. There are the 6 days that the cloud settled on Moses when he was on the mountaintop. Perhaps it is a reflection of that 6 days. Others say the Festival of Booths, and that is important because of what Peter says when he sees Jesus and Elijah and Moses on the mountaintop. He says, hey, let me make 3 booths for us to stay here. But whatever the case, even in this theophany, even in this miraculous event, Jesus says, once they got to the top of the mountain, Jesus says, we can't just sit here. So as I enjoyed my hike up Mount Washington, as Larry Walters enjoyed his balloon ride up to 11,000 feet in the air, the inner circle, Peter, James, and John, were going on a hike with Jesus. But they had no idea, like Larry Walters, no idea what was going to happen at the very pinnacle of that journey. In fact, it was so terrifying to them. Peter ends up, kind of blurting this out. It says, the text tells us they didn't know what they were saying. They experienced things that would change them forever. But what really could the transfiguration mean for his disciples? And what can the transfiguration mean to us today? The transfiguration happens on a mountain. Peter is so awestruck that he wants to remain there. But Jesus is very quick to remind them that they're not going to stay on top of the mountain. And oftentimes, the mountain experiences that we have, not just in climbing mountains, but, we oftentimes say that when we're really close to God, it feels like a mountaintop experience. We can't remain there, right? We have to come back into the valleys of our lives, the places where ministry happens and sorrow happens and the struggles happen. But it's often in those journeys. Who was it? Hannah Montana sang a song about it's not about the mountain that we climb. It's not about the journey. It's I can't remember the song, but it's the climb, right? Oftentimes it's in the climb that we learn the most about ourselves. Every experience where we can feel that real glory of God, that real connection with God, those experiences are very precious to us. And the urge for us to remain in that transcendent experience is very strong. But, like the bright star, the brilliant star that led the Magi to the cradle where Jesus was, just like the miracle of the water turned to wine, even when we gather around the grace of the Lord's table, those are experiences that are to be propellants for us to get on to the ministry of Jesus Christ, to do the mission of the church, to preach and to live out the good news of God's kingdom. That glory that is displayed in the transfiguration, and that glory that is what we preach about every Sunday, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You see, ministry of the church is not to be about sitting still and wallowing in and remembering what has been, although that does inform our current and our future ministries. And ministry is not just about coming to church every Sunday, sitting and listening to a sermon and taking part in the sacraments, right? Although that is important, but ministry is about moving on to what will be, what can be, what should be. When we share the story of Jesus Christ, when we tell that compelling love and mercy and grace that comes to us through the ministry of Jesus Christ. We cannot stand on the mountain and experience that the glory of God and then not feel compelled to share that story with others. Sir Edmund Hillary, there's another mountain climber. He, May 29th, 1953, he made it to the summit of Mount Everest with a Sherpa guide. 15 expeditions before him had failed. He was the first to make it. Many had died on those slopes trying to get to the summit of Mount Everest. His accomplishment, of course, made him an instant celebrity. He was knighted by the Queen. Now, Hillary could have just moved back to his home and stayed secluded in his house and just sort of live out the rest of his life in quiet, just appreciating what he accomplished. But instead, Hillary returned to Nepal and to the Sherpas that he had grown so much to love and respect. And as he lived among the people in Nepal, an elderly Sherpa came to him one day and explained how the children lacked appropriate education or appropriate educational opportunities. And in response, Sir Edmund Hillary established the Himalayan Trust. And in a few years, he raised enough money to build a school. And over the years, that Himalayan Trust has built 27 schools, 2 hospitals, 12 medical clinics, and many other pieces of infrastructure like airports and bridges. Hillary made it to the top of that mountain and to instant celebrityship. But it was when he returned to the people, when he came down the mountain, that he really made a difference in people's lives. You see, we can dwell on the accomplishments of the past. We can sit and worry about what the future might bring to us. We can even sit and wallow in the successes of the things that we're doing right now, which is really difficult because of this pandemic that we're living in. We have been sitting around for many, many months, worrying and wondering and hoping. The mission of the church is often just ground to a halt. We need to take this time not to sit and worry and think upon what was. What we need to be doing is discerning what will be. What are the new opportunities that are going to be presented to us as a church, as people of God? What are going to be the ministries that come out of this pandemic? What are going to be the needs of the people? How can we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with those in a post-pandemic society? Many churches have ministries that exist. The giving to the church has in many churches has been stronger than ever. People are going to begin to return to worship. The vaccinations are coming. 10% of the population right now has received the vaccination. It will be lucky if we get to 50% by the end of the year. That's my opinion, but that's the opinion of many that I have read in studies and in books. So while we are in a period of kind of taking a break, the ministry of the church never stops. The needs of the people never stop. This week, many of you are going to be either watching virtually an Ash Wednesday service. You might be participating at home. We have take-home ashes that you can get as part of our congregation at Zion Lutheran Church in Hummelstown. There will be opportunities at St. John's, Hornerstown, for a drive-through Ash Wednesday to receive the imposition of ashes between 12 o'clock noon and 2 o'clock p.m. at St. John's Lutheran Church in Hornerstown. But we're going to embark on the 40 days of Lent, and that is a time of reflection. Lent can be a burden to us. I'm curious what Lent will feel like this year, in this pandemic year. Lent is one of those times where we really express what it means to be countercultural. What do I mean? Well, Lent calls us, in this society that tries to continue to tell us that we are to hoard things and to think only of ourselves. Lent asks us to think about others. Lent asks us to give up things. So while we are continuing to discern, while we are continuing to quarantine, while we are continuing to hunker down, now's the time to be praying and to be studying the Word, to be preparing, to be thinking about this journey, this 40-day journey of Lent. It is part of our journey as we not climb to get to Jesus, but we climb to understand the ways of Jesus, to live out this Christ-like life in our lives every day. So we have to continue, even in a pandemic. We have to continue to share the story of Jesus Christ, share our faith stories with others, tell people about our experiences with that transcendent light, the divine light, the light of Christ that shines in our lives. And so, my friends, may this Transfiguration Sunday, the light of Jesus Christ, the divine light, may it burn brightly in your hearts, and may it keep your hearts and minds in Jesus Christ on this Transfiguration Sunday, as we go to Ash Wednesday, as we begin our journeys in Lent. May that light burn brightly in your lives. So I hope this Gander at the Gospel is helpful for you. Remember, our faith is not what theologian we follow. Our faith is not what church we belong to, what we call ourselves, what denomination we are. Our faith is that sharing the story of Jesus Christ, living out the gospel, sharing the love, mercy, and grace of Jesus Christ. I always say, go out and be someone's thankful today. And what that means is, go out and live your life serving others, serving God, so that those that know you, that you serve, will be truly thankful that you are a part of their lives. God bless you.